My name is Jordan. I'm 32. And 3 weeks ago, I sat in a quiet administrative office watching my father realize his authority over my house had just been permanently revoked. He held the paperwork in shaking hands, reading the same paragraph over and over like the words might rearrange themselves into something different. "This can't be legally binding," he said, voice tight. "I'm family. You can't just cut me off like this." The housing authority representative, a calm woman named Ms. Chen, didn't even blink. "The homeowner has full discretion over access authorization. Your name was removed from all systems 3 weeks ago. This meeting is simply to confirm you've been formally notified." My father turned to me, eyes wide with something between shock and rage. "You actually did this? Over keys? After everything I've done for you?" I stayed silent. Not because I was afraid, but because I'd already said everything that mattered. And if you've ever wondered what happens when the calm, reasonable child finally stops explaining and starts enforcing, you're about to find out. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It started the day I bought my house with money I earned, credit I built, and independence I fought for without anyone's help. I didn't buy my house on impulse or luck. I spent 5 years saving every spare dollar, building my credit score from 620 to 780, researching neighborhoods, comparing mortgage rates, and working overtime shifts until my eyes burned. When I finally closed on the 3-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb, I paid for everything myself. Down payment, closing costs, inspection fees, every single dollar came from my accounts. No family loans. No cosigners. No strings attached. I thought that would be enough. I thought owning my home outright, having my name alone on the deed, would finally prove I'd built something independent. Instead, my father looked at my house and saw excess capacity. "All that space," he said at the housewarming, walking through my empty guest room. "Seems wasteful for one person. You could help family when they need a place." My mother nodded. "It's so big. You'll barely use half these rooms. Family should be able to stay when they visit." Have you ever worked yourself to exhaustion building something that's entirely yours, only to have people treat it like community property the second you succeed? I smiled politely that day and changed the subject. But I should have recognized the warning signs. They weren't admiring my achievement. They were calculating how to use it. I was raised to be the reasonable one. The calm one. The one who didn't make scenes or cause problems or rock any boats. Growing up, that meant being praised for not complaining when my younger brother got the bigger room, the better bike, the college fund I helped contribute to from my part-time job at 16. "Jordan's just easier," my mother would tell relatives. "She doesn't need as much attention. She handles things." Handling things meant babysitting without being asked, covering shifts at my father's shop without being paid, lending money that was never called a loan and never paid back. But I was mature for my age. Dependable. Low maintenance. You ever notice how low maintenance really means we can take from you without giving back? When I got my first apartment at 23, my father showed up with boxes of his stuff. "Just storing some things here temporarily," he said, filling my closet with his old tools and paperwork I wasn't allowed to move. When I said I needed the space, he acted hurt. "Family helps family. Don't be difficult." That word. Difficult. It became the weapon they used any time I tried to set a boundary. Difficult meant unreasonable. Difficult meant selfish. Difficult meant you were breaking some sacred unspoken rule about always saying yes. So I stopped being difficult. I said yes. I smiled. I made space. Until I finally had a house with a door I could lock. 2 weeks after I moved in, my father came by with coffee and that casual tone he used when he'd already made a decision and was just letting me know. "I was thinking," he said, sitting at my new kitchen table like he'd helped pick it out. "You should give me and your mother a set of keys. Just in case of emergencies. What if something happens and you're at work?" I set down my cup carefully. I appreciate the thought, but I'm not giving out keys. I have security monitoring and emergency contacts through my insurance. If something happens, they'll handle it. He laughed. Come on. That's paranoid. We're family. I know, I said, keeping my voice level. And I'm telling you clearly, I'm not distributing keys to anyone. This is my home. I need to control who has access. His smile tightened. You're making this weird. No one's going to rob you. We just want to help. I don't need that kind of help, I said. Have you ever stated a boundary so clearly, so calmly, so reasonably that there was zero room for misunderstanding, only to watch someone pretend they didn't hear you? He left that day shaking his head, muttering about how success had changed me. But I thought that was the end of it. I'd said no. Adults respect no. Except my father doesn't hear no. He hears, convince me harder. 6 weeks later, I flew to Denver for a mandatory work conference. 3 days, client meetings, training sessions. I left my house locked, alarm set, camera notifications active on my phone. On day 2, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the app expecting to see a delivery driver or maybe a neighbor's cat. Instead, I watched my Uncle Rick walk through my front door. Not breaking in. Not forcing entry. Walking in with a key like he'd been invited. My stomach dropped. I called my father immediately. Dad, why is Uncle Rick in my house? Silence. Then, casually, oh, he needed a place to crash for a few days while his apartment gets painted. Fumes are bad for his lungs. I told him he could stay at your place since you're out of town. You weren't using it. You gave him a key? After I explicitly told you not to? I made copies, he said, like this was normal. Just in case. And this was an emergency. His apartment getting painted is not an emergency. And you had no right. Jordan, don't be ridiculous. He's family. You have 3 bedrooms. Stop being selfish. I hung up, hands shaking. Not with anger yet. With the sick realization that my boundary meant nothing to him. That consent, to my father, was just a suggestion he could override whenever convenient. Have you ever felt your own space stop being yours while you were powerless to stop it? I flew home a day early, rage giving way to something colder and more calculated. When I unlocked my front door, the house felt wrong before it looked wrong. The deadbolt wasn't engaged. I always engaged it. Always. In the kitchen, cabinet doors hung slightly open. My coffee mugs were in the wrong order. A towel I didn't recognize sat folded on the counter. Upstairs, the guest room bed was unmade. Someone had slept there. Used my bathroom. Eaten my food. Lived in my space without permission. I checked my security logs. My uncle had entered 4 times over 3 days. But there was more. My cousin Lisa had come by twice. My Aunt Maria once. People I barely spoke to had keys to my house and were walking in whenever they wanted. My father had made multiple copies. I sat on my couch in the house I'd saved for, worked for, earned entirely on my own, and felt like a guest in my own home. Like I was renting space in someone else's property instead of owning my own sanctuary. You ever come home and realize people have been living your life without your consent? Using your things, occupying your space, breathing your air like they own it? That night, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't call my father screaming. I made a different choice. I started documenting everything. When I finally called my father, I kept my voice calm. You gave multiple people keys to my house without my permission. That needs to be addressed. Addressed? He laughed. You're acting like we robbed you. Nothing was taken. No one damaged anything. We helped Uncle Rick and he's grateful. Why are you always looking for problems? You violated my boundary. I said no keys. You made copies anyway. Because your boundary was unreasonable, he snapped. Family should be able to help each other. You have space you're not using. Rick needed a place. I solved a problem. You should be thanking me. Thanking you for breaking into my house? It's not breaking in when you're family. You're being controlling and paranoid. What are you hiding in there that you're so worried about us seeing? There it was. The deflection. Suddenly I was the problem. I was suspicious. I was overreacting. The fact that he'd distributed keys to my private property without consent had been reframed as me being unreasonable for caring. Have you ever confronted someone about violating your boundaries only to be told you're the villain for having boundaries in the first place? This conversation is over, I said quietly. Fine. Be stubborn. But don't come crying to me when you need something. I hung up. And that's when I stopped explaining and started planning. I didn't argue after that. When my father called, I kept responses short, polite, non-committal. When he asked if I was still mad, I said I was just busy with work. When he suggested family dinner, I said my schedule was full. He interpreted my silence as surrender. He thought I'd accepted that this was just how family worked and I'd get over it eventually like I always did. I didn't tell him I was wrong. I just let him believe it. Meanwhile, I started keeping detailed records. I screenshotted every security notification. I documented every unauthorized entry with date, time, and duration. I saved text messages where family members casually mentioned stopping by my house when I wasn't home. I compiled rental agreement templates, property law statutes, and trespassing definitions. I researched locksmith services, security system upgrades, and legal consultation costs. Have you ever stopped defending yourself and started collecting evidence instead? There's a strange power in watching someone think they've won while you quietly build a case they don't see coming. Within 2 weeks, I had a timeline showing 17 unauthorized entries by 6 different people over 28 days. People I hadn't invited. People who didn't live there. People who thought family meant ownership. My father noticed nothing. He texted me links to furniture sales for your guest room and asked if relatives could use my address for mail. He was so confident in his control that he never saw me taking it back. The legal consultation was brief. I sat across from attorney Rebecca Torres and showed her everything, the timeline, the texts, the explicit boundary-setting conversation from months ago, and the evidence of repeated violations after I'd said no. She read through it methodically, her expression growing sharper. Did you give your father permission to distribute keys? No. I explicitly told him not to. It's documented in these texts. And he did it anyway while you were out of town? Yes. She leaned back. Here's what you need to understand. This isn't a family dispute. This is unauthorized access to private property. The fact that he's your father doesn't give him rights to your house. You own it. You set the terms. So what are my options? You can revoke access, change locks, and officially notify all parties they're no longer permitted entry. If anyone uses old keys after notification, that's trespassing. You can also document this formally with your homeowner's insurance and local authorities so if any damage or liability occurs, it's clear who's responsible. She paused. But understand, once you do this, your family will likely react badly. They'll call you extreme. Unreasonable. Ungrateful. Can you handle that? Have you ever been warned that enforcing your boundaries will make you the villain and realized you were okay with that? Yes, I said. I can handle it. Then let's make it official. 1. I didn't know that giving someone keys created liability until Rebecca explained it. But the law was clear. Anyone who distributes access to property they don't own carries responsibility for what happens with that access. If my uncle had damaged something, I could be held liable for knowingly allowing an unauthorized occupant. If a relative got injured in my house during an unauthorized visit, my insurance might deny the claim because I'd permitted unsupervised access. My father had exposed me to legal and financial risk without my knowledge or consent, all because he decided his convenience mattered more than my boundaries. Access equals liability, Rebecca said. The system needs to know who authorized the access. Right now, it looks like you did. We need to create a paper trail showing you didn't. She drafted formal letters, one revoking all previous verbal or implied permissions, one notifying each person they were no longer permitted entry, and one documenting my father's unauthorized key distribution with my insurance company and HOA. These aren't just for show, she explained. If anyone enters after receiving this notice, you have legal recourse. More importantly, you have protection. The liability shifts to the person who violates the boundary. And my father? He'll be officially notified that his authorization, which never technically existed, is now formally void. Any future access attempts will be documented as trespassing. Have you ever discovered that the rules you thought protected your family actually protected you from them? I signed everything. My father got more confident as weeks passed. He mentioned my house in conversations like it was family property. He told my brother he could stay there during his job interview trip. He gave my address to a cousin looking for temporary housing. Jordan won't mind, he told people. She's got space. He assumed I was too passive to act. Too afraid of conflict. Too conditioned to please. At Sunday dinner, he announced he was planning a family reunion at my house without asking me first. It's perfect, he said. Big yard, plenty of rooms. We'll do a weekend in July. That doesn't work for me, I said quietly. You don't even have plans. You just don't want to be generous. My house. My choice. He laughed. Technically it's family space since we help you so much. You've never helped me with my house, I said evenly. Not with the down payment, the mortgage, the repairs. Nothing. We give you emotional support. That counts. Around the table, people nodded. My mother said, family is about more than money, Jordan. Have you ever watched people rewrite history in real time to justify taking something you earned without their help? I didn't argue. I just smiled and changed the subject. Let him keep planning. Let him keep talking. Let him build his confidence until the ground fell out from under him. He had no idea the letters had been sent. The locks were being changed. The systems were being updated. And the administrative meeting was already scheduled. I changed the locks on a Tuesday while my father thought I was at work. The locksmith came, replaced everything, and programmed new digital codes I didn't share with anyone. I upgraded my security system. Every door, every window, motion sensors in every room. The cameras now recorded continuously with cloud backup. I notified my HOA that only I was authorized for property decisions and that if anyone claiming to be family requested access or modifications, they should contact me directly for verification. I updated my emergency contacts with my insurance company, removing my father and adding my attorney and a trusted coworker instead. Every step was quiet. No announcements. No confrontations. Just systematic removal of access he should never have had. Have you ever reclaimed control so quietly that the person who took it didn't even notice until it was already gone? The formal letters arrived by certified mail the same week. Each relative received notification that they were no longer permitted to enter my property. Each letter explained that previous access had been unauthorized and that future entries would be considered trespassing. My father's letter was different. It explicitly outlined the liability he'd created by distributing keys without authorization, the legal risks he'd exposed me to, and the formal revocation of any implied permissions he thought he had. This is effective immediately, the letter stated. Any future access attempts will be documented and reported to appropriate authorities. He didn't call. He showed up. My father arrived at my door on Thursday evening, letter crumpled in his fist, face red with rage I'd seen 100 times before. The rage that used to make me apologize for things I hadn't done. He tried his key. It didn't work. He tried again, jamming it harder into the lock like force would change reality. I opened the door calmly, staying in the doorway. Can I help you? What the hell is this? He shoved the letter toward me. Legal notifications? Trespassing threats? Over family staying at your house? Over you distributing keys without my consent after I explicitly told you not to. I'm your father. I don't need consent. You do, actually. It's my house. I own it. You don't. His jaw clenched. You're really going to be this petty? This controlling? I'm going to enforce the boundary I set 6 months ago that you ignored. Family doesn't work like this. This family does now. He tried to push past me. I stepped back and closed the door to a crack, keeping my body in the frame. You're not coming in. If you try to force entry, I'll call the police. You'd call the cops on your own father? If you trespassed, yes. Have you ever seen someone realize they've lost power they never actually had and watch them spiral trying to reclaim it? He stared at me like I was a stranger. You've changed. Success made you forget where you came from. No, I said. It helped me remember I have the right to control my own space. 14. 3 days later, my father sat in Ms. Chen's office at the Housing Authority, holding the paperwork that made everything official. I'd requested the meeting through Rebecca, who'd filed formal documentation of the unauthorized access and liability concerns. The Housing Authority didn't investigate him or punish him, they simply confirmed in writing what was always legally true: I owned the house. I controlled access. He had no authority. This document, Ms. Chen explained patiently, confirms that Jordan is the sole owner and decision-maker for the property. No other party has authorization to access, distribute keys, or make determinations about occupancy. But I'm family, my father repeated, like those words were a magic spell that would change the facts. Family relationship doesn't grant property rights, she said. You would need to be a co-owner, legal tenant, or formally authorized representative. You're none of those things. So she can just cut me off? After everything? She can control access to her own home, yes. That's what ownership means. This was the moment from the beginning. The moment he understood his authority was an illusion he'd maintained through my compliance. The second I stopped complying, it evaporated. He looked at me finally. You planned this. This whole formal process. You really went this far. You gave away my keys, I said. I responded appropriately. Appropriately? This is vindictive. No, I said. It's called consequences. After the meeting, my father tried one more approach. Not rage. Negotiation. Look, he said in the parking lot, voice softer. I get it. I overstepped. But this? Legal threats, formal proceedings, cutting me out completely? That's too far. We can fix this. How? I'll collect the keys. I'll tell everyone they can't just drop by. You give me one key, just for real emergencies, and we move on. I shook my head. That's not fixing it. That's asking me to trust you again after you proved I can't. I'm your father. You have to trust me eventually. No, I said. I don't. He went still. You're really doing this. Cutting off your family over keys. You cut yourself off when you decided my boundary didn't matter. So what now? We just never speak again? That's up to you, I said. We can have a relationship where you respect my property rights. Or we can have no relationship. But we're not going back to you having access to my house. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he tried one last angle. What if something happens to you? What if there's an emergency and someone needs to get inside? I have systems for that. Emergency contacts who are authorized. It's all documented. Strangers have more access than your family? People I trust have access. You lost that when you betrayed it. Have you ever refused to repair something that wasn't actually broken until someone else broke it? He had no response. Because I wasn't asking him to understand. I was informing him of the new reality. My father called Rebecca directly, trying to negotiate around me. She shut that down in 30 seconds. Your daughter has made her position clear. This isn't a family mediation. It's a property rights issue, and she owns the property. He tried my mother next, who called crying. You're tearing this family apart. He made a mistake. Can't you forgive him? I can forgive him without giving him keys to my house, I said. It's just keys. Why does it matter so much? Because I said no and he did it anyway. If he'd respected my boundary, we wouldn't be here. You're being stubborn. Difficult. There was that word again. Difficult. The weapon they'd used my entire life whenever I tried to exist on my own terms. I'm being clear, I said. Dad can apologize and respect my boundaries, or he can stay away from my property. Those are the options. He shouldn't have to apologize for caring about you. He wasn't caring about me. He was using my house for his convenience. Have you ever realized that people who demand you forgive them never actually apologize for what they did wrong? My mother hung up. My brother texted calling me ungrateful. My Uncle Rick, who'd used my house without permission, posted on Facebook about entitled millennials who forgot family values. The outside world, the one that didn't know what actually happened, called me extreme. Harsh. Too sensitive. But I didn't need their approval. I needed their absence. Rebecca's final letter arrived 2 weeks later. It confirmed everything with official stamps and legal language. All liability for prior unauthorized access has been reassigned to the individuals who distributed or used keys without homeowner consent. Jordan's insurance company has been notified and updated their records accordingly. Any future claims related to this matter will be directed to responsible parties, not the homeowner. I read it twice, feeling something settle that had been anxious for months. If anything had been damaged during those unauthorized visits, if anyone had gotten hurt, if any legal issues emerged, I wasn't responsible. The people who'd violated my boundaries would face the consequences. My father called one last time. This is really how you want to end things? With lawyers and restraining orders and no contact? I never filed a restraining order, I said. I just revoked your access to my property. Same thing. It's not. You're still welcome to call me, to meet for coffee, to be part of my life. Just not in my house. What kind of relationship is that? The kind where my boundaries are respected. He was quiet for a moment. Then, very quietly, I never thought you'd actually do this. I know, I said. That was the problem. Have you ever had someone tell you they never thought you'd enforce your boundaries and realized that was exactly why you had to? The line went dead. He didn't call again. I'm writing this from my living room. The house is quiet, exactly how I left it this morning, exactly how it will be when I return tonight. My father hasn't tried to enter since the locks changed. No one else has either. The unauthorized visitors stopped the moment consequences became real instead of theoretical. Was I too harsh? Some people think so. They say family should forgive, that I took things too far, that legal action was extreme. But those people never had to come home to find strangers living in the space they'd sacrificed for. They never had their boundaries dismissed as unreasonable by people who thought blood was permission. I don't regret what I did. I regret that it was necessary. My father thought he could ignore my no because I'd always let him before. He learned that compliance has an expiration date. That the child who used to smooth things over grew into an adult who documents violations and enforces consequences. Distance replaced chaos. Quiet replaced invasion. My home became mine again, not because I yelled or begged, but because I stopped explaining and started acting. Here's what I learned: access is not love. Family is not ownership. And consent doesn't become optional just because someone's related to you. So if your family treats your boundaries like suggestions and your space like community property, ask yourself, are you really the difficult one for saying no, or are they difficult for refusing to hear it? I locked my door behind me tonight, and for the first time in months, I knew with certainty that it would still be locked when I came home. That's not loneliness. That's peace. And I'm keeping it.